Every single day, thousands of companies get that notification they've been absolutely dreading, a security breach. The alarms go off, and suddenly, it's not just a technical problem, it's controlled chaos. So what actually happens in those first few critical moments and hours? Well, let's dive in and break it all down.
All right, this quote right here, it really gets to the core of what modern cybersecurity is all about. Look, the goal isn't to build some kind of digital fortress that's impossible to break into. That's pure fantasy. The real test, the true measure of how strong a company is how fast and how well it reacts when an attacker, and this is the key part, inevitably gets inside.
So, yeah, that really is the big question, isn't it? What happens when one of those attackers actually gets through? Well, when a breach is happening live in real time, it is an intense, high-adrenaline, super high-stakes situation. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a digital crime scene. You've got chaos, you've got confusion, and you have this relentless ticking clock. The real challenge, it's turning all that chaos into a calm, clear, and methodical response.
And how do you do that? How do you bring order to that chaos? Well, you do it with a plan. And this is exactly where something called incident response, or just IR for short, comes into play. It's the official playbook, the guide, that brings a structured, calming force to that digital crime scene we were just talking about. It's what lets the real, methodical investigation finally begin.
Okay, so what is incident response, really? At its heart, it's a structured, formal approach to handling a security incident, and it has three main goals. Look, it's not just about stopping the bad guy in the moment. It's about 1, minimizing the damage, 2, getting everything back up and running, and 3, and this one is so important, it's about learning from what happened so you can stop it from ever happening again.
Now, most companies aren't just making this stuff up on the fly. They follow a standard playbook, a framework, and one of the most common ones comes from NIST. That's the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology. So let's walk through it. First up, you've got preparation. This is everything you do before an attack even happens. Then, bam, detection and analysis. That's the moment you realize you've been hit and you start figuring out what's going on. Next, you jump to containment. Think of this as stopping the bleeding, isolating the problem so it can't spread. After that, it's eradication, which is exactly what it sounds like, getting the attacker and their tools completely out of your systems. Then comes recovery, getting everything safely back to business. And finally, and I can't stress this enough, you have post-incident activity. This is the step that, believe it or not, gets rushed or even skipped all the time. But it's where the real learning happens. It's the most important part of the whole cycle.
Of course, a playbook is just a bunch of paper if you don't have the right people to actually run it. And incident response is absolutely a team sport. I think the best way to picture it is like an emergency room team. You've got all these different specialists, right? Each one has a super specific, critical job, and they're all working in sync to stabilize the patient. Only in this case, the patient is the company's entire network.
So let's meet some of the key players on this team. First, you've got the incident handler. This person is the quarterback, the field general, leading the whole response. Then there's the forensic analyst. This is your digital detective, the one digging through all the data for clues. You also have the threat hunter, who's a bit more proactive. They're out there actively looking for other hidden threats. And then you have legal and PR. And trust me, you never want to forget about them. They're the ones managing all the compliance headaches and making sure the company's reputation stays intact.
Okay, this is a really important distinction to make. Incident response and digital forensics, they sound similar, but they're really two sides of the same coin. Think about it like this. Incident response is the ER team that rushes in to stop the bleeding. It's all about fast action. Digital forensics, well, that's the deep investigation, kind of like the autopsy that happens afterward. It's a much slower, more methodical process. It's like digital archaeology, patiently digging and piecing together every little bit of evidence to figure out exactly what happened step by step.
And that whole digital archaeology thing, it has to be incredibly precise, almost scientific. That's why these forensic analysts live by a few core, unbreakable rules. First, they never touch the original data. They make a perfect, verified copy and work from that. Second, they maintain a super strict chain of custody, which is just a fancy way of saying they document every single person who handles the evidence and when. And finally, they document everything, every click, every command, every thought. And this isn't just them being extra careful, it's non-negotiable. Why? Because their findings might have to hold up in front of the CEO or even in a court of law.
All right, so theory is great and all, but let's see how this playbook actually works in the real world. Let's put it into action. We're going to walk through a scenario involving a really common and, frankly, a really damaging type of attack.
I'm talking about a ransomware infection. Yeah, we've all heard the horror stories about these, right? Attackers get in, they lock up all your important files with encryption, and then they demand a ton of money to give you the key. It is easily one of the most disruptive and financially devastating attacks a business can ever face.
So the second that ransomware hits, that IR playbook slams right into action. Step 1 is isolate. You have to immediately yank those infected computers off the network. Literally unplug them. The goal is to stop the ransomware from spreading anywhere else. Step 2, restore. The key here is you do not pay the ransom. Instead, you wipe the infected systems clean and bring them back online using clean, verified backups you hopefully have. And step 3, verify. This is critical. Before you plug anything back into the network, you have to be 100% certain the attacker didn't leave behind a secret backdoor to get right back in.
Okay, so once the immediate fire is out, right? Systems are back online, business is running again, you might think the job is done, but it's not. In fact, the most important part of the entire process is just beginning. This isn't just about getting back to normal, it's about getting stronger.
And how do you measure that improvement? Well, it all comes down to 2 key numbers. You've got MTDD, which stands for mean time to detect. Basically, how long was the bad guy in your network before you even knew they were there? Then there's MTTR, or mean time to respond. That's how fast you shut them down once you found them. And the goal after every single incident is simple. Get these 2 numbers as low as you possibly can. Drive them down towards 0. Because when you're dealing with a breach, literally every single second counts. And honestly, if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. A breach isn't a failure. It's just an inevitable part of being online today. The difference between a good organization and a great one is how they see it. The best, most resilient companies don't see it as some huge embarrassment. No way. They see it as a high-stakes fire drill. It's a priceless chance to find their weak spots and get way stronger for the next attack. And if you need proof of why this matters so much, here's a perfect real-world example. Just last year, in 2023, a huge cloud provider got hit with a breach. But here's the thing, because their incident response plan was so well practiced, so rehearsed, they went from spotting the intruder to completely containing the situation in just 6 hours. 6 hours. That is the incredible power of being prepared. It can turn what could be a company-ending catastrophe into just a manageable, controlled event. So, at the end of the day, incident response isn't really about just cleaning up a mess. It's this continuous loop of responding, learning, and getting better. It's the whole process that makes sure that after every single incident, and there will be more incidents, the organization comes out of it smarter, faster, and tougher than before. Which, of course, leaves us with just one final question to think about. Are you prepared?